A very good evening to you and welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Bongi Wazwane, standing in for Clement Manyatela. Coming up on the show this evening, we get reaction from the International Relations and Cooperation Department following the shocking news of the passing of the country's ambassador to France, Nathi Mthethwa. Minister Ronald Lamola speaks to us. The day 9 of the Madlanga Commission was nothing short of explosive. Political governance analyst Sandile Swana will also be speaking to us on that very story. Then we'll take a look at the Tembisa Hospital and the SIU's report. The DA's Jack Bloom will then speak to us because he says this is just the tip of the iceberg. So how bad things really are, we'll give you a sense in just a moment. AGOA SA will also be speaking to them about AGOA coming to an end today, but Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Pakistan remains optimistic about its renewal. So do they share that sentiment? We'll speak to them. But first, my comment. Now, it might be early days, but the testimony in the Madlanga Commission so far paints a disturbing picture of apparent links between business, politics and the criminal underworld. KZN Provincial Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi laid the foundation for what was to be his boss's testimony, that is General Fanny Masemula, adding some of the detail. But now, Crime Intelligence boss Dumisani Khumalo is taking the Commission through some of his evidence, one WhatsApp message at a time. Important to note, these are still allegations, but they're disturbing nonetheless. Khumalo took the Commission through a series of chats he says were between alleged crime boss Vusumuzi Kat Madlala and Northwest businessman Brown Mokhotsi. A comb through some of these chats places the pair directly into access of SAPS tenders, HR databases and the KwaZulu-Natal political killings task team.
The names named are within the sentence that starts with, they were about to arrest the police officers who were implicated in the killing of Cindy Somagaqa. I'm told that all reports that were withheld by Begicele have been retrieved and handed over to Minister Senzo Mchunu. That is the message then contained in that first paragraph. The second paragraph, it continues to talk about the information, alleged information then around that case of the killing of Cindy Somagaqa, mentioning some of the names of people that were involved, as well as other names as the firearms, the money exchanged, and then some of the noticeable names are the names that we are aware of that were part of our briefing yesterday on the same case.
Now, it's alleged that Madlala was also making direct payments to Mokhotsi to cover expenses for events held by the African National Congress. In return, Mokhotsi is believed to have leveraged his influence to obstruct an investigation into Madlala. But it seems Mokhotsi may not have been able to keep his end of the bargain.
On the 14th of May at 6:53 in the morning, again, Mr. Madlala is sending a message without receiving the response yet on the message of the 8th. Now it's on the 14th morning, just to let you know that my contract was cancelled yesterday, and I see you have been ignoring me and promising me things that never happened. Luckily, took screenshots of every conversation just in case something like this might happen. I'm taking all this to the media and some to court on Friday when I do the interdict. That will take us to page 90. After that message, there is then an attachment as attached as Annexure BM, 7 that Mr. Matlala is sending to Mr. Mkhotsi.
Now, while South Africans wait to see which direction things will take, former President Thabo Mbeki has added his voice.
I'm very, very glad that Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi had the courage to speak out on this thing. Because at last now we have the possibility of the Madlanga Commission, which will then hear evidence from everybody. So at least the country has a picture of what's the real state of the criminal justice system. Who are these criminals who are doing all sorts of terrible things? Who are they? Where do they come from? How do they operate? To answer those questions, because in the end, there must come a comprehensive response to the issue of crime and corruption in the country. A comprehensive response, and I'm sure that's going to come out of what the Madlanga Commission will hear. And therefore, the practical, actual steps, what is to be taken, will be based on concretely what is happening in the country. I'm very, very, very glad indeed that General Mkhwanazi, General Masemula, the leadership of the police have decided that they must speak out publicly about all of these things, because I think the country needs it.
I think the commissioner's statements today and his testaments highlight that most of what General Mkhwanazi said is actually playing out in the public. And this will date back to that infamous July 6th presser that he made. Himself and the National Commissioner have essentially corroborated their evidence. It will now obviously be up to the minister and others who are implicated, because they will have the opportunity to speak and sort of give clarity where needed, for them to show that what is being alleged by Khumalo, Mkhwanazi and Masemula is not true. So it remains to be seen. However, at the point, it really does paint a very grim picture of rampant corruption, patronage, and compromising of the country's intelligence.
Now, this is not the first time we hear about apparent political influence on state departments. The Zondo Commission covered this extensively, but we're asking, what leads to the apparent blurring of lines between politics, business, as well as what appears to be the criminal underworld? Is it simply a misunderstanding of the roles here, or is there more to this than what we have heard? But also, what will it take for the country to get rid of this rot once and for all? So you can send us your WhatsApp voice notes on 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name and surname and where you are sending your voice note from, and please keep it at 30 seconds. Send us an X as well at Face the Nation SABC. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll speak to the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola. We'll talk about the passing of the ambassador to France, that is Nathi Mthethwa. Thanks for staying with us. The South African government is mourning the death of Ambassador to France, Nathi Mthethwa. Now, according to reports, Mthethwa fell from the 22nd story of a hotel in Paris and also served in various government roles, including as police minister and minister of arts and culture. The Department of International Relations says the circumstances of his passing are still under investigation by the French authorities. And for more on this, I'm joined by Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola. Minister, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Condolences to you on the passing of someone you would have known very well, working with him, not only in the ANC, but in government at some point.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bongwe, and to all the viewers of SABC. Indeed, we are mourning the untimely passing of our ambassador to the Republic of France. And we have also conveyed our condolences to his family and also to his organization, the ANC. Indeed, it's a very sad loss, because Ambassador Mthethwa had re-strengthened relations between South Africa and France. He has worked very hard build that relationship.
And when I know that the French authorities are still, conducting their own investigations, but are they sharing any details, any updates with the government?
Not yet, except the confirmation that he has passed on and that they are still investigating the circumstances of his passing. We are aware that he was found dead within the adjacent of the Hyatt Hotel in Paris. But that is as far as the French authorities have shared. But the investigation is unfolding, and we will take it from their reports.
Yeah, and I know that you say that you've conveyed your messages to the family as well. Are you able to tell us how are they holding up?
It is a very difficult circumstances, as I have already said, particularly the circumstances around his death. So it's a difficult situation, particularly for his wife, who is also in Paris. And our president had the opportunity to speak to her and convey government's message of condolences, and also convey the ANC's message. So it is indeed very difficult for everyone. And we, as government, are providing all the necessary support to the family to enable them to understand the circumstances. And the French authorities, I must mention, have been very cooperative and have been of assistance. Because they were contacted earlier by his wife when she realized that he's not coming back in terms of the usual time. And they promptly started processes. So they've been very helpful, and we believe that they will continue to be very cooperative and helpful to both the South African mission in Paris and also to Ambassador Mthethwa's family.
And what happens now in terms of the processes?
Once there is an amount of clarity from the French police, the family and the mission will work on the process to repatriate his body back to South Africa, and the family will obviously decide on the processes in relations to his funeral. They will obviously be in consultation with the government, which then announcements will be made at the right time once all the consultations and the decisions have been made by the family in consultation with government.
Minister, I know that, on another note, you may not be part of the DTIC, but, you've been, of course, in the US and have been someone that has been watching relations between the two countries, us and them, over time now. And one wonders if you share the optimism of Minister Tau about the renewal of AGOA?
Yes, we do engage, myself and Minister Tau, and we have also been engaged with various government representatives in the US and the relevant stakeholders. There is some level of optimism, but as we always say, that it remains an unpredictable environment, but we are consciously optimistic.
And what would you base that optimism on? Because when one reads the statement by Minister Tau, he speaks about how Congress is optimistic on both sides of the aisle, and it does seem like when there are conversations, there may just be, according to some reports, that an extension of a year possibly. So what, for you, are you basing this optimism on?
Is based on the conversations we have had with all the relevant stakeholders, including Congress, and some sentiment within the State Department and the White House itself. But as I have said, the situation remains unpredictable, but we are cautiously optimistic that there could be some leeway or breakthrough that could bring some temporary relief on the matter. That is what it is based on, is on the basis of all the engagements that have happened between DTIC, ourselves, and all the relevant stakeholders, Congress, and the State Department and White House.
Does it signal somewhat of a better approach when it comes to relations, or even on the relations front between us and them? Things are still as volatile.
Yes, but the engagements have been very constructive, which are giving us some level of conscious optimism that there is engagement which is open, and they raise their issues and we also raise issues on our side. But on this specific matter in relation to AGOA, there is a bit of some conscious optimism that there could be some movement that could bring some temporary relief.
Minister, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. That was the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola. When we come back from the break, we'll have a conversation that takes us into the Madlanga Commission, Day 9. Explosive, of course, as it has been since the beginning. We'll speak then to governance and political analyst, Sandile Swana. Now, the Madlanga Commission has wrapped its second day with the SAPS Crime Intelligence Head, Lieutenant General Khumalo, on the stand. The Commission heard testimony around WhatsApp messages allegedly between suspected crime syndicate boss Vusumuzi Matlala and Northwest businessman Brown Mokhotsi. Khumalo revealed how Mokhotsi had unauthorized access to sensitive police information, including details of SAPS employees' data meant to be restricted to the police HR department. Sandile Swana is a political and governance analyst and joins me now via video link. A very good evening to you, Mr. Swana, and thank you so much for your time. So, your take on what you've heard so far?
Thank you so much, Bongo, and good evening to your viewers. What we've heard so far is consistent with what Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi had highlighted when he started this whole thing. And many said there is no evidence, wara. There is evidence. We did say there is evidence when you have telephonic records or bank statements. Those are good. In today's world, that is hard evidence. And many people are starting to say there is overwhelming evidence right now against our rulers in this country.
You do have others who say that treat this, though, with caution, because it's still early days, it's still one side. We're waiting to hear from those who are being implicated.
From a governance point of view, we are not lawyers. You know, if a window is broken or a sewage pipe is broken, it is broken, it needs to be fixed, the sewage must stop running in the street. We don't need the court to declare whether that is true or false. So there's a part of this that belongs to the lawyers, but there's a part of this that belongs to leaders, that belongs to the citizens, and that's the part that is of interest to me. On the basis of these facts, that if such records exist and people access commanders of our police and try to threaten them in many different ways to disobey the law and manipulate processes of the state, we as citizens and leaders of communities need to take action against those who hold power, and we should control the rule of law in the country and make sure that all laws are obeyed by everyone. So we're not worried about what the lawyers will say at the end of it all.
Now, in 2020, right, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa says, and I quote, "We must acknowledge that the ANC has and remains deeply implicated in South Africa's corruption problem." And now we're hearing that alleged crime syndicate boss Vusumuzi Matlala allegedly made payments towards ANC events. Can the ANC, in your view, ever shake off these allegations of links to corruption?
I've brought a quotation for you, made by Kgalema Motlanthe, 19th of January 2007. This is what Kgalema Motlanthe said. This road is across the board. It's not confined to any level or any area of the country. Almost every project is conceived because it offers opportunities for certain people to make money. A great deal of the ANC's problems are occasioned by this. Kgalema Motlanthe, 1901-2007. So the corruption has been there for a long time. I could have brought you a quote from Mandela in 1995. So corruption and the African National Congress go together. It is in the DNA, it is in the bone marrow of the African National Congress. The African National Congress cannot divorce itself from corruption.
So when you then listen to what the crime intelligence boss is actually saying here and making some of these serious allegations and also taking us through some WhatsApp conversations, presenting some pictures when it comes to ANC fundraising events, you look at some of the payments that he says would have needed to be made for some delegates and all of that. One wonders though, if then this is a political party that again the name is coming up in a commission, should its president, who is the president of the country, be the man to receive this report by the commission?
Especially if you remember that Cyril Ramaphosa bought this presidency that he has. And there are many more in the cabinet, in the NEC and elsewhere of the ANC who bought the positions that they hold. And he is put there and kept there by the DA, put there and kept there by Business Leadership South Africa, BUSA and others. He is going to receive the report with non-binding recommendations, like he received this on the report, knowing that his CV, the very same Steenhuisen said that he cannot have a president who hides money in furniture. Is now a business partner in politics in the cabinet with this person. So that is where we are for the time being. The only thing we can say is that the young people of this country need to catch the spirit of Stephen Biko and rise up and change the system of governance in this country.
How do they do that?
The same way that Stephen Biko did, but I'll tell you one part. In 1977, before he was killed, he said he's giving the government 10 years and it will be out of power. In 1985, South Africa fell into junk status and never recovered until the National Party was out. We were out there ourselves, people like myself were out there in the battle with the regime. The young people of today need to do what we did. They must do it.
So as a young person then, you, as you say, took part in that. Fast forward, you are looking at everything that has happened in South Africa up until this point. Are you proud of what you achieved? And what are your reflections then on the country today, given what we are hearing in the Madlanga Commission?
I'm very positive about South Africa. I love this country. And I'm very positive about the future. All that I can say is that we did what we did. 1994 came. The 1994 settlement was not perfect, but it created 100 times more room than the room we had prior to 1994 to conduct political activity. Through the offices of the ANC, that room was used to destroy the prospects of black people in South Africa and the prospects of proper democracy, including economic democracy. However, just like we were born in the 60s under very difficult conditions, the people who were born later in the 90s and the 80s need to find the same courage that we found and cast aside cowardice and change this country for the better.
When you look at politics and you look at the ANC, for example, we hear that the ANC is always talking about renewal. That's what they talk about in each and every single, gathering. You hear about the renewal of the ANC, and they talk about how now they're focusing on the quality of the cadre as well as they continue to say this. But one would ask, if you look at the current leadership of the ANC, is this the leadership that should be tasked with the renewal of the party?
I have said it many times over. I think that the ANC, first of all, even if we were going to do renewal in the ANC, the first step is to remove the ANC from state power completely. The ANC cannot be allowed to continue running this country. It is disgracing the black majority in this country. It's disgracing Oliver Tambo. It's disgracing Robert Sobukwe. Anybody who has ever contributed to the liberation struggle is being disgraced by the ANC. That MEC, I would say 95% of them do not qualify to be members of the African National Congress or the members of any credible liberation movement.
And when you look at these apparent links, because yesterday we're getting a report from the SIU, for example, it paints a picture of what, so far it has been able to uncover as far as corruption goes at the Tembisa Hospital. And yes, we're hearing from Eddie Mutibi, who says that this is a complex investigation. We still need to, as the SIU, uncover a bit more. Now, another name comes up from there. That's, the name of Vusumuzi Matala. Again, allegations are also being made against this particular individual when it comes to the Madlanga Commission. I wonder for you, right, when it comes to the issues around governance and state departments, when everything becomes synonymous with some characters whose, some people whose characters come into question, what does that do as far as governance is concerned in its systems?
So the issue here is not the individual. It's not Ket Matlala. Some people came here, they would have said it was Govt, others may mention one name or another name. It doesn't matter, the name doesn't matter. So when you're looking at governance, you're looking at systems, patterns, and processes. What is the general pattern? The pattern that we are seeing, some of the patterns, and it's not surprising that the data that, from a different angle, that SIU is uncovering is the same that the SAPS is uncovering. It will be the same that the Auditor General will continue uncovering it, and it will point down to the same syndicates. Now, these syndicates have got 15 markets in South Africa and 15 markets across sub-Saharan Africa, let's say from Ethiopia right down to Cape Town. So they are bosses, they are masterminds who run these things. So the ANC is just one of the criminal syndicates that are operating in our region. It is one of the syndicates itself. So you don't need to be fascinated with people looking at those WhatsApps. You can see these are not sophisticated minds. These are not advanced criminals. These are just ordinary thugs. So we are just being robbed blind in billions of rands by just very simple, ordinary thugs.
Thank you so much, Mr. Swana, for your time. Appreciate it. That was politics and governance analyst Sandile Swana. And of course, as we are asking you this evening, we're asking you about this very matter, right, as to, in your view, what do you think leads to the apparent blurring of lines between politics, business, and the criminal underworld? Keen to hear from you the details there, of course, of how you can reach us on your screens. But also remember, we are also on X as well at Face the Nation. Thanks for staying with us. Now, the Gauteng provincial government says it will request a widespread investigation by the Special Investigating Unit into multiple hospitals across the province. This follows the release of an interim report into tender fraud and corruption at Tembisa Hospital. Now, the report has laid bare the looting of about 2 billion rand in state resources through corruption, fraud, maladministration, as well as collusion and bid rigging. Now, the report further implicated Gauteng government officials and hospital employees. Jack Bloom is the DA's Gauteng Health spokesperson and joins us live now. Jack, good evening to you and thank you so much for your time. So, is Tembisa Hospital a symptom of a bigger problem?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's scams in virtually every hospital in Gauteng. This one was particularly egregious. I mean, 2 billion rand from a mid-sized hospital. And the fact that it wasn't picked up at head office shows you that there was actually a collusion, because they were grossly overspending their budget for a number of years. These were all fake companies and they weren't really receiving any goods. So, 2 billion rand over 2 or 3 years for a mid-sized hospital is just unbelievable. And then if you think of, how poorly resourced this hospital is, if you go there this evening, you'll find patients, crowded together, there's broken machinery, it's really not in a good state, the hospital. And you think, my goodness, 2 billion rand could have changed completely the environment of that hospital. And just think of the mentality of people who basically stealing from poor and vulnerable, sick people who should be receiving decent treatment in our hospitals. It's just, frankly, unbelievable greed. And then you see what the asset forfeiture unit is seizing assets, Lamborghinis, 4 Lamborghinis, no less, worth more than 50 million rand, a Bentley, 90 million rand properties, people living in absolute luxury while patients at Tembisa Hospital suffer. But it's not just this hospital, it's across the board in the Gauteng Health Department.
And for you, what makes the system so easy to take advantage of without being detected? That's if they're not being detected, because there is a possibility here that someone could be turning a blind eye.
I think there's a blind eye right from the top. I think that there's political protection, that certain people the controls are deliberately ignored. And this should have been picked up at the central office of the Gauteng Health Department. Babita Deokaran picked it up. And she informed the chief financial officer at the time, who basically covered it up. And in fact, it would have remained covered up. We wouldn't know anything about this. The SIU wouldn't be investigating if it wasn't for a very brave journalist called Jeff Wicks. The police had Babita Deokaran's cell phone and her laptop computer for a full year. They did absolutely nothing with it. Then finally they returned it to the family, and that's when Jeff Wicks did his investigation. So without independent journalism, we would know nothing about this. Obviously, we'd suspect it and there'd be rumors, but it just shows you that there's collusion at the very top, and the DA has been calling for some time now, frankly, for the head of the Gauteng Health Department to be removed, as well as the MEC for Health. It's just incredible. The current head of the Gauteng Health Department is himself being investigated by the SIU for allegedly participating in millions rands bribe to influence tenders. Now, how on earth do you appoint somebody like that to oversee a department with a budget of 67 billion rand? So, yes, I'm sure that the rot is across the board in hospitals all across Gauteng, and until Premier Lesufi acts decisively and changes the top leadership, this is going to continue.
And there is another link here, right, that the SIU speaks about. It speaks about the lower level employees who the SIU says are causing a lot of damage in the departments. These are in supply chain officials as well as clerks. And one wonders, why are these individuals not behind bars?
Well, absolutely. Now, the SIU has referred, it's 116 referrals, disciplinary referrals. It relates to about 13 officials, and they need to, speed up the disciplinary processes, and they mustn't allow these people to resign before it concludes. And then we need criminal charges. But, you mustn't just go after the small fish. Many of these officials were quite low level, but, they got away with it because of the connivance of people higher up. So, not just the small fish, let's go for the big fish. And quite frankly, one of the biggest fish happens to be the nephew of President Cyril Ramaphosa, nephew by a previous marriage. His name is Hangwani Morgan Maimela. Now, this was the largest syndicate identified by the SIU, and an astounding 813 million rand was procured by the syndicate with basically fake companies, fraudulent fraud all over the place, and they did it by bribing officials. 122 million rand was paid to the officials in total by all the syndicates, and of course there was actually Vuzimuzi Kat Matlala himself was linked with the Maimela syndicate, and he actually got 13.5 million rand from these irregularly awarded contracts, fraudulently awarded contracts. So I mean the connections go very high up, and I believe that it's there all over the place, and until you actually act decisively at the top levels and remove people who and replace them with absolutely honest and competent people like Babita Deokaran. Babita Deokaran did her job, and she paid for it. She was assassinated. So the justice system works too slowly. We need to see criminal prosecutions. It needs to end up in court, and let's go for the big fish and do it speedily.
And the Gauteng department saying that it now wants a bit more of an open process. That is the Premier saying that he wants a bit more of an open tender system. Can that help?
Well, it's only as good as the people who administer it. We've seen that. We've really got excellent processes, supply chain management. The SIU just details how all these regulations and procedures and safeguards were just disregarded. So if you've got dishonest people, if you've got people who accept bribes, and if you have people in senior positions who don't do their job, who deliberately turn a blind eye, then of course this is just going to continue time and time again. They will exploit loopholes that are there. And the one recommendation I do recommend that the SIU made is lifestyle audits. We need to do them across the board, and we need to be transparent about the results of the lifestyle audits. Premier Lesufia has boasted that he's done lifestyle audits on heads of department. In fact, he said that 3 of the heads of departments failed it, but he won't tell us which of the 3 and what's happened to them. If they failed their lifestyle audits, these are heads of departments. You need to actually scrutinize what happened while they were in office and take further action. But here's the Premier of the province who won't disclose to us who's failed their lifestyle audits. So a lot more transparency is needed. And, quite frankly, investigations take too long. This SIU report is an interim report. They've actually said that they will conclude it by November 2027, but it was said at the press conference yesterday they tried to conclude it by probably late next year. But that's just for Tembisa Hospital. What about all the other hospitals? We could go on and on with investigations, but we need to see people in court. The Life Esedimeni tragedy, 144 mental health patients died. That was 9 years ago. Not a single person has been criminally charged. We can't go on like this. We need to have specialized courts. We need to expedite the processes. We have to have consequences, and until that happens, I think abuses are going to continue.
Dear Gauteng Health spokesperson Jack Bloom, thank you so much for your time this evening. And we did reach out to the Department of Health in Gauteng, still awaiting to see when exactly will they be able to have a conversation with us, because this is, one of those matters that really needs them to speak about what happens now, particularly when it comes to putting in systems in place that are going to be able to deal with what is happening once and for all. When we come back on the other side of the break, we're going to be talking about the issues around AGOA. We touched on it a little bit with the Minister of International Relations, but we'll be speaking to Agri SA, that's Johan Kotzo's on standby, to talk to us about what exactly, will it mean if it is not extended, or if it is by a year, is it good enough? And the volatility of these relationships, how are they managing to work around all of that? Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Pakstow says he remains optimistic about the renewal of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, following his visit to the US. The US trade program, which expires today, provides African countries with duty-free access to American markets. Now, South Africa faces major consequences should the program not be renewed. According to the department, SA-US total bilateral trade amounted to around $20.4 billion in 2024, with South African exports totaling around $14.6 billion, while South African imports amounted to $5.8 billion. Now, more on this, on the loss, of course, in fact, on what it would mean if we do lose AGOA, we now speak to Johan Kotze, who's the CEO of Agri SA. Johan, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. So, in a statement earlier on, the minister says he is optimistic because, according to him, it does seem to be that across the aisle, at Congress, there is and that optimism to then renew AGOA. Do you share this optimism with him?
So, yeah, we've been there as a business delegation a while ago, and the sense we got from the Democrats and the Republicans was that all of them agreed that AGOA is one of the best tools to develop agriculture in Africa. So we came back with the same sentiment that they do see the value of AGOA, and specifically for agriculture. So I share the sense of positive and a positive outcome. Maybe not in the way that we had AGOA in the past, but maybe an extension of AGOA, and then with the option to renew a new kind of AGOA. But we all had the sense that AGOA is valuable to the Americans, and they want to continue with AGOA.
Are they saying in those discussions, if there's a new one, what form should it take?
Yeah, listen, they had issues with specifically agriculture with chicken. That was a big one. The pork imports from America to South Africa without any restriction. And then, of course, the citrus trade. So I think one thing that we kind of, we ask government not to let go of the phytosanitary measures that we have specifically for pork, and then for them going out with citrus. We asked that it wouldn't be lifted, because I think that's a protection that kind of protect countries from, and if I say countries, you talk about animals and people, and also the plants that we have from certain diseases. But I think the positive about this is the mutual concept of growth in agriculture for specifically the southern region of Africa.
Now, of course, it's one thing to have the optimism and the mutual possibly agreement that this should happen. One wonders, though, for how long? Because when we see some reports this evening, they suggest that there are some White House officials who are saying that possibly for just another year. Would that be sufficient?
Well, listen, it's better than what we have now. So the take is just, it gives us more time to renegotiate. I think one thing we've learned out of this whole, I would say, 30% tariff and the tariffs which the Trump administration brought in, is you need to have a relationship with America. And I think we lacked that in the past. So if they're going to give us extension of 2 months, we're going to take it. We want to have a market open to America. So tariffs is for us as agriculture, it's a blow, because it's margins that you kind of take out of our already, I would say, under pressure markets. However, we need to have an open market to America. So anything would do us good. And I think if we have a year, we have enough to work to maintain the situation, or maybe gain a greater kind of concept of AGOA for both countries. I think what we need to understand with AGOA is it is such a pure mechanism to develop agriculture. It's a mechanism where you don't need to control anything in the sense of corruption, because it's literally from the consumer down to the farmer, where we farm in rural areas. And that was the greatest attraction to them, that it's a system that works, it's well regulated in the value chain, and it's well managed in the value chain. And I think that was something that we kind of punted to say, if you if you're really honest about what you say on development of agriculture, AGOA is not one that you need to blow. You need to stick to it, specifically for us in South Africa.
And given the volatility of the relationship, and speaking to the Minister of International Relations earlier on, he did say, yes, he shares the optimism, but there is, of course, the uncertainty as far as this relationship with the United States is concerned. Should things go south and it not be renewed, given the tariffs that have kicked in, it could have serious, and dire consequences for the sector.
Yeah, listen, we will survive it as agriculture. You talk about 4% of our total value of exports goes to America. However, if you look into certain industries, we're going to have a battle. We're seasonal in what we do with America, so they counter-seasonal to us. So we're nearly at the end of the citrus industry and the exports to America. So that one is more or less just out of the block, or I would say we can kind of survive that. The next one coming in is grapes, and one we often talk about is the ostrich industry. 60% of produce of the ostrich produce and export goes through Brazil and America, and a big blow to them, specifically if you talk about the area itself to the Southern Cape side of what we know as Oudtshoorn. That would be a big blow to us. But you know what, Bongi, we're going to survive this.
Yeah.
It's tough for us. But with the Trump administration's tariffs, they're also all over the world. It's not just us being affected by this. Some deals opened up because there was a shuffle in the total export kind of environment in the world. So Chile is not exporting that much anymore to the UK. It's not exporting that much, say, for instance, to China or India. So there's some more opportunities opening up for us. But it's turbulent times, and it's not easy to go through this uncertainty that we deal with. But we will survive this. And I think out of this, we can come out stronger than what we were in the past.
And to hear optimism is quite a great way to end the show. Thank you, Johan, for talking to us this evening. Appreciate your time. That was Johan Kotze there, the CEO of Agri-SA. And let's just quickly take some of your comments as we've been asking you tonight. What do you think leads to the apparent blurring of lines between politics, business and the criminal underworld? Sustainable Fashion says, when money and power mix, the lines get blurry fast. Reminds me of Douglas Shop's point about how markets get distorted when political conditions override fair competition. And that Jolisto guy is saying, being uneducated, power hungry and greedy, also not caring about people who voted them into power. All right, these are some of your comments tonight, and we are of course asking you to send your voice notes as well, and let's then listen to what you have to say.
Hi, Bongiwe. My take on this is that the lines between politics, business, and the criminal underworld blur only when corruption becomes the glue holding them together. In this country, honestly, corruption isn't just an exception. It's a state policy in disguise. That's really my take. My name is Buhle from Pretoria. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Buhle, for that comment, and of course those comments on X as well. And this, as the Madlanga Commission continues day 10, will still have the crime intelligence boss, Tembisa Khumalo, who will be back giving evidence there, and will continue as SABC News to give you a blow-by-blow account. And from us, good night.